Hi, I'm Dan Barker. I'm co-president here at the Freedom from Religion Foundation, as you heard the words to that song. And welcome to Ask an Atheist.
And I'm Chris Line, an attorney at the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
And I'm Andrew Seidel, the Director of Strategic Response here at FFRF. Chris and I are two of the Freedom from Religion Foundation's 9 constitutional attorneys working to keep state and church separate.
So we have a jam-packed show today. Sorry I didn't have a tie, you guys, but at least I have a coat.
You didn't get the memo?
I didn't get that memo today. We're going to talk about issues down in the Deep South and up into the Northeast. But first, as always, we want to ask you to ask questions. Feel free to ask your questions. You can post them right here on Facebook, on this feed, or you can send an email to us at askanatheist@ffrf.org. And this is quite an auspicious and busy week this week. And Andrew, after all these years, your book is finally out. Andrew Seidel's new book, The Founding Myth, Why Christian Nationalism is Un-American. It's out. What day was it?
It came out Tuesday, officially was the release.
Tuesday, really. And I know downstairs in the basement, hundreds of these books are flying out to people who are ordering them. So
it's really exciting.
So finally, after all these years of work, and we've talked about it, and we'll talk about it some more. We have other things to talk about today, but you did a, what did you call it, a radio tour yesterday?
Did a radio tour yesterday. I did something like 40 plus radio interviews, and I've just been getting a ton of support from the FFRF community, the atheist community, secular Americans everywhere have been reaching out, sending me photos of the book. It's really been great. I'm just touched by all the support I've received. So
basically, America is not a Christian nation. And it's a real good thing it isn't, because Christian views are basically un-American. And the upside-down flag on the front?
Yeah, upside-down and inverted colors. The upside-down flag is a signal of distress, so it's kind of a fun design feature on that.
Oh, great. So we'll talk more about your book. It must be pretty exciting. Your voice sounds a little hoarse after all
that radio tour was rough.
So over to Chris now. Chris, you've been really busy. You've been sending out all these letters of complaint around the country with some victories. Something about crosses in Texas. You've been covering this issue. What is that about?
Yeah, we had a complainant let us know that in Cold Spring, Texas, their courthouse has 4 large Latin crosses, large white Latin crosses, one on each side of the courthouse.
The Latin cross is like the T-shaped.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And these crosses are not only there, so they're up all the time on this courthouse, and then in around Christmas time, they even light it up. So it's these lit crosses up in Texas. So,
well, what's wrong with that?
Well, as you already know, Dan, the government can't display religious symbols like crosses on county property. The government cannot endorse a particular religion. In this case, obviously, they're endorsing Christianity by putting the most prominent symbol of Christianity up on a county courthouse.
This was Cold Spring, Texas. So this generated a lot of publicity, right?
Yep, I think we got some clips of some coverage of this.
Do we? Let's look at it.
So here's what happened. A foundation called the Freedom from Religion Foundation, based in Wisconsin, says a longtime resident of Cold Spring complained to them about the crosses. And those we talked to have a hard time believing that.
It's crazy stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure why they want them down.
God doesn't force any of us to accept him. So what is that cross hurting? That cross isn't hurting anybody.
I think it's wrong that they come up here to our little bitty town. I want to come in here and boss us around. If you don't like it, go back to Washington, D.C.
So the foundation sent a letter to the county judge here asking him to take the crosses down immediately because they, quote, are an unconstitutional endorsement of religion, end quote.
The complaint is the display of Latin crosses on a public courthouse. Any display of a religious symbol like that by the government is a constitutional violation of the Establishment Clause.
San Jacinto County officials greeted with a sound of cheers after unanimously voting to keep 4 crosses on its courthouse in Cold Spring. Hundreds of people had turned out for the commissioner's court meeting Wednesday morning, outraged that the Freedom from Religion Foundation demanded the symbols be taken down from the building.
I'm here today at this meeting as a servant of Jesus Christ our Lord and a Savior, asking that the crosses on our courthouse in Cold Spring be left on this building.
The organization, meanwhile, saying in this letter to the county judge that the original complaint came from someone in the city. They say the county displays 4 Latin crosses in its courthouse all year round and even lights the crosses up during the holiday season.
The Constitution requires that the government not promote, endorse, or advance religion. By having these symbols up on the county courthouse, the county is violating the Establishment Clause.
So, you stirred up a hornet's nest down there. Where is Cold Springs? Like north of Houston or
I
something?
think it's near Houston, yeah. San Jacinto County.
And so they decided not to take them down?
Yep, and it's pretty obvious. As soon as they decided to put this up for a vote, we know how the vote's going to come down.
No, I mean, we see this. This is sort of a script that happens where FFRF will write a letter on a very clear constitutional violation. The town will get wind of it in this small town. They'll deny that anybody in their town could ever have opposed the clear violation of the Constitution, which you saw happen when they were interviewing people. Then they'll say, go back to where you came from, which you saw happen. The problem with that is that the Constitution actually applies everywhere in the United States, not just to where we happen to be. And then later on, you see them get out their torches and their pitchforks at the meeting and stand up and defend their God, because their God needs...
Well, they're proving our point, aren't they?
Exactly.
Basically, the county might argue this is just a secular thing, but the people do not view that as a secular thing.
No doubt when some sort of legal action comes of this at some point, that's exactly right. The county's not going to be making the argument that promoting Christianity by the government is fine. They're going to come up with something and pretend that this is not Christian, even though it's very clear.
And that probably sounds ridiculous to people watching. How can you declare that a Christian cross is secular? And that is ridiculous, but we actually see this time and time again, and it just happened at the Supreme Court a couple months ago when they were arguing the Bladensburg cross case, where you had the people in favor of the cross actually arguing, hey, look, this is actually, it's a 40-foot tall Christian cross, sure, but it's a secular symbol. So Supreme Court, you should go ahead and let us keep it up. Well, it's absurd.
If it's true that it's just a secular symbol, then the town folk shouldn't care if it's removed, right? It's just a secular symbol. Why are they bothered by the removal of a secular symbol?
I mean, they take it even farther. A lot of the people have a problem. They are making an argument that by removing the Christian cross, it's some sort of slight against Christianity. You're somehow disfavoring Christianity by not having one religious symbol on the county courthouse. And I mean, this was obviously a big deal to the town because more than 600 people showed up for this meeting. It overfilled the room and they had to have a second viewing room. There are only 900 people in this town. This is a town of 900 people. 2/3 of the population apparently showed up for
They didn't invite you to testify.
They did. I mean, we did an action alert. We tried to get our people out, but from reporting, it sounds like nobody, and not surprisingly, nobody was willing to come and stand up for our side there when, 2/3 of the population is showing up in strong support of this illegal
What are we going to do about this now?
Well, we're going to talk with our complainant from the town. We're going to, look at our options and see whether, there's going to possibly be some legal action going forward. I mean, it's clear here. We have a clear violation of the Constitution that they're clearly standing by. And in fact, I don't know if you'd seen, they actually the other day lit the crosses up now. Normally they do it around the holiday season. After this vote, they're now lighting the crosses almost as like
They're thumbing their noses at us.
Exactly, right.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually, and it's making their case, should this end up in court, worse. They're making things harder on themselves.
Right, we're going to be able to show that upon learning about this, they held a public meeting where, dozens and dozens of people came in to explain why this does stand for Christianity and that the government should endorse Christianity and should keep them up to endorse Christianity. That's all in the record now.
Yeah, we know that 2/3 of the town thinks this is a Christian endorsement, so that's going to help the case.
And that they don't understand the difference between free speech and government speech. Did we hear from their attorney at all, their legal counsel?
We have not. We have not received a response from.
So we have to wait.
We did hear from some attorney, didn't we?
Yes, the Attorney General's office.
The Texas Attorney General.
Texas Attorney General's office. One of the Assistant Attorney Generals, Jeff Mateer, wrote in support of the town, making some derogatory statements about FFRF and, sort of unequivocally saying that these Latin crosses are legal, but not providing much much in the way of citation or legal cases to show, because no court has ever found Latin crosses promoted by the government as a legal thing with government endorsement of religion.
Jeff Mateer, why does his name sound familiar?
Yeah, it should sound familiar to FFRF supporters and some of our watchers. Jeff Mateer was one of the judges, the judicial nominees that Trump put up that FFRF strongly opposed. And we were actually successful in stopping his nomination from making it through the U.S. Senate. So Jeff Mateer is his views on the law are so extreme that he couldn't be one of Trump's judges on a federal court. Which, I mean, and that really does say something about the quality of his lawyering and his ability to offer a sound legal opinion on something that touches on his personal religion.
Objective, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Mateer he's known for, we actually made a couple of videos about Jeff Mateer during his nomination, and he's known for really spouting these extreme positions. And he actually worked at sort of the anti-FFRF, this place called the First Liberty Institute, before he got a job at the Texas Attorney General's office. And First Liberty Institute has, in a way, really tried to kind of captured the Texas Attorney General's office there.
So they know all about us, and we know all about them. So maybe he's a little mad at us. Who knows?
I think so. I mean, it seems like it's clear that they, you know, that capture has worked, because I don't think in any way you could view this as a true something that the Attorney General's office in Texas should have weighed in on, and in particular to weigh in so wrong on the wrong side.
Absolutely terrible from just the opinion, just the standpoint of giving a good, objective, lawyering opinion on a matter. I mean, just really, really out there. It does suggest that maybe his personal animus towards FFRF really came out, and he's letting that infect his job at the Texas Attorney General's office. Okay,
from Texas, you've been really busy, Chris. Now to Pennsylvania. What's going on in it's an elementary school, right?
Yeah, we received a complaint from a parent that in an elementary school in, it was Seidel Elementary School in, I believe it's Springfield School District in Pennsylvania, that every day after the Pledge of Allegiance was said, the principal or whoever was leading the Pledge of Allegiance would say, "God bless America." So they effectively tacked this "God bless America" statement every day onto the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're requiring students, students were saying this every day, this repeated recitation of this message. So we wrote to the school district, letting them know that having a religious message repeated every day, having kids participate in it, that this was a constitutional violation. We very quickly got a response back from the district's attorney letting us know that they immediately stopped the practice, and that is not going on anymore.
They did the right thing.
They did, but to illustrate kind of the problem here, actually, a problem flared up again right away. So we then were actually contacted by a different parent, contacted us and said, "Hey, I saw that you guys did this, but today someone said 'God bless America' again over the loudspeaker." So I immediately gave a call to the district's attorney and said, "Hey, you guys told us that this is over. What's going on?" Well, they did such a good job indoctrinating the students there that the students can't stop saying it. It's part of their daily routine. So when a student was saying the pledge, they said "God bless America," even though that's no longer part of the thing. And I think we've got a clip that can show a little bit more about this.
Oh, do we? Okay.
This all started after the parents of one student got upset when the principal said "God bless America" daily after the Pledge of Allegiance over the public address system.
The Establishment Clause of the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution prohibits government sponsorship of religious messages.
Freedom from Religion Foundation attorney Chris Line laying out the law to us via Skype. And through a statement, Springfield School District administrators complied, and they stopped Principal Peter Brigg from leading Seybold students every morning in reciting the phrase, "God bless America," after every Pledge of Allegiance.
It is a form of suppression.
Every president has, said "God bless America." It's the right thing to do.
I think it's good that we still do the Pledge of Allegiance, but I do understand that other people have other religions and that not everyone believes in God.
I do respect that, and I can get it. But, to some people that's used to it, it may cause a little friction.
My son did that every day at Scenic, the other elementary school here. And all these other children do.
And Springfield administrators tweeted Sable students will still have that constitutional free speech right as well if they want. That the only change is that the principal will no longer recite God Bless America over the PA system or encourage kids to say it. Chris Line agrees, but he says there's still a concern.
Now, when a school starts a religious message, it's a little bit more complicated about what they have to do in order to, correct the violation.
How in the world can they say, take that away? God bless America, and took the prayer out of school. So, what else?
Are they going to come here when a student sneezes and the principal says, God bless you? Is that the next step?
Suzanne Hoffman has 2 kids at Sable.
I try to, instill in my kids every day the sense of unity and community and patriotism, and that's what I'll continue to do with my kids, and they will continue to say, God bless America.
Now, a number of parents who didn't want to speak on camera said that they were angry with school administrators because they didn't even put up a fight, while other parents said they didn't roll over, they just didn't put up a fight in a battle that they could not win.
So much there.
So, Andrew, are you going to go to Pennsylvania, and when some kid sneezes, are you going to stop the principal from saying "God bless you"?
Yes, that's the next on my list. Right after the book tour, that's what I'm doing. Yeah,
go around and watch the principal.
There was so much amazing awfulness in that video. I mean, you could. We can work backwards. The one parent at the end there was saying, "I teach my kids about inclusion and community." And trying unity, I think was the word that she used. And if that is true, why are you then telling your children to shout out God bless America, this divisive slogan that excludes non-religious children and treats them as though they are not Americans, essentially? I mean, you're talking about excluding more than a third of any given class in any given schoolroom in the United States. That's a huge amount of kids that are just alienated by this phrase. So it's not inclusive, it is exclusive.
So the school did the right thing, and we're watching to see what's going to happen from that. But this also generated some national news as well, right?
Yeah. It was picked up, I think, by Fox News, Fox and Friends.
Fox News, the good folks, they couldn't resist getting their kicks in. Let's look at Steve Ducey and Ainsley Earhart throwing as much gas on that fire as they can manage during this clip.
It's one of our country's most patriotic songs and says, God bless America. So why was one elementary school forced to stop saying it after the Pledge of Allegiance?
Saybold Elementary School in Springfield, Pennsylvania got a letter from the Freedom from Religious Foundation, which stated in part, God bless America is a prayer. A prayer hosted by a publicly supported school does not pass constitutional muster. But our next guest says people should ignore any suggestion to ban God bless America.
Deputy General Counsel at First Liberty, Jeremy Dice, joins us now. Jeremy, thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. Is it unconstitutional? Has a court ever said that this violates the Constitution?
Well, of course not. Nor have they said things like "in God we trust" or even the phrase "under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance are unconstitutional. These are perfectly acceptable phrases and things that we've used throughout our country's history to describe our great feelings of gratitude for living in a land of the free and the home of the brave.
So that's a different Jeffrey at First Liberty, right?
It
Not
is.
Jeff Mateer, Jeffrey, whatever his last name.
Jeremy Dice.
Oh, Jeremy. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it is the same organization.
Yeah.
So that is where Jeff Mateer used to work before he went to the Texas Attorney General's office. Jeremy Dice is now a deputy whatever over there. And again, if you watch this full clip, it's just amazing because it's this. You can tell that First Liberty is really not concerned with what the law actually says. I mean, you saw it in Jeff Mateer's letter about the crosses on the courthouse, and you can see it in this appearance. He mentioned in this appearance, and we'll go over some more of that clip. He mentions land of the free, home of the brave, directs people to the First Liberty website a couple times, does a good amount of free advertising for First Liberty, talks about 9/11. He manages to get 9/11 in there. Tragedy, battles, and then his argument culminates with, you saw it at the beginning there, "In God we trust, one nation under God." That's always a favorite. And then it culminates with saying that the grass is pink is absurd. And that is essentially the argument. Notably absent from all of that is anything related to the law or the First Amendment or the way the courts have interpreted the First Amendment. First Liberty is very light on the law.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as we know, the law does not say what.
It's in our favor, not theirs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, is God Bless America a prayer, as you told them?
Well, the song that it comes from begins as we raise our voice in solemn prayer. But also it's important to look at sort of the way it's being used, and its context too, because they're not singing the song here. This principle is just chosen to say, God bless America. And so if you just look at what that means, I mean, it could be one of two things. You could be asking God to bless America, which is a prayer of religious request.
Or commanding God to bless America.
Commanding God, or just saying, or you're stating that God blesses America, a religious statement of faith. So no matter how you look at it, it's clearly a religious message being repeated by a school official to school people. And as people do often in these situations, they've kind of conflated it and taken it from what it is, which is a school promoting and endorsing religion, and try to reframe it as religious freedom and say, almost like, we have the religious freedom to hear a religious message by the school. Which
and to say it, we saw it in the first clip with that parent who said that this is suppression. Arguing essentially that he gets to use the machinery of the state to promote his religious message on a captive audience of school children, right? It's not suppression to tell the government that it can't impose religion on other people's kids. It would be suppression if the government went into that guy's house and said, hey, stop saying God bless America to your kids. But it's the exact opposite when the government self-regulates and says we're not going to violate the First Amendment by imposing religion on other people's children.
Or if the Freedom from Religion Foundation was barging into churches and interrupting services, stop believing. If we were trying to deny them their freedom to believe or to assemble or to get together.
Well, it's really simple. You don't get a government megaphone to spout your religious message. That's what it boils down to.
Okay, I think we have another clip.
Another clip from...
But Jeremy, you know how it works. Different entities wind up with a letter from this organization, and they're afraid there's going to be a protracted legal fight. It's going to cost them a lot of money. So rather than fight, they just say, you know what, we don't need that.
Yeah, that's really regrettable that kind of thing happens. And I would really encourage those folks to go to firstliberty.org before they even begin to consider responding to such letters, because we'd love to help them think that through. Look, when we bow to those kind of demands, that kind of bullying tactic that we get rid of these phrases that have been so long a part of our nation's history, we begin to undermine the very freedoms that have made this country grand and have led to people like Irving Berlin to even put that song together and make those words put together here as well.
So actually this issue is not about the song, he was just saying the phrase, but at the beginning of that Fox and Friends clip, she mentioned the song, and then Jeremy, what's his last name?
Dice.
Jeremy Dice also is bringing the song into it. But that song, God Bless America, by the way, a lot of people don't know, there's Kate Smith singing the song back in the 40s. And she actually popularized the song in 1938 on her national radio show on Armistice Day. And she was looking for a peace song, anti-war song, to keep our country out of the war. And she asked the songwriter Irving Berlin if he could come up with this anti-war peace song. And Irving Berlin, who wrote the song God Bless America, actually did not believe in God. He was an agnostic, he was a humanist. His biographer said he was not a believer. He was raised in a Jewish family, but he never adopted the religion of his parents. So the song God Bless America itself was written by somebody who didn't believe in God. He was using it as a kind of a catchphrase, I guess, for a character in a musical. He was writing a military musical. And what would these military men be singing as they came back from Europe during the war? So that wasn't his views, those were the views of some of the characters in the musicals.
Yeah, but now this principal has taken that phrase and is trying to use it as a religious message to impose upon kids. In the same way that, a lot of these Christian right groups have taken the phrase "In God We Trust" and try to say, we're going to bring God back into school by putting this phrase in school. They take what has been called a secular or a non-religious message by the courts and use it as a religious message. And in this case, this song written by a non-religious person using that phrase, though, in a religious way and trying to impose a religious message on students.
So there's an irony here, because now Kate Smith has did you want to say something, John?
No, go ahead.
Kate Smith has recently come under fire because she had made some comments which were racist early in her life. So like the Philadelphia Flyers hockey team and the New York Yankees decided they were going to stop using the song God Bless America because she's the one who popularized the song, so let's not use it at all. By that same logic, people who believe in God, if they learn that a person who didn't believe in God wrote the song, shouldn't they also want to stop using the song because of the supposed questionable origin?
Don't you have a whole chapter in your book, God the Most Unpleasant Character, about God's racism?
Yeah, I do.
So, I mean, overall, it's pretty tainted. But there was another interesting part of that clip that we glossed over at the beginning there, where they say, you know, towns can't fight this and local governments can't fight this because they'll end up paying, you know, huge sums in legal fees. Which is true, but it's true because they lose the cases. You only pay the fees of the other side when you lose the case. I mean, so you have First Liberty and Fox News admitting that we are right on the law, and that if this went to court, they would lose the case and be forced to pay our attorneys.
Because if they were right, they shouldn't be afraid of going to court.
Exactly,
right?
And that makes some of the things that Jeremy Dice from First Liberty says in some of the other clips we're going to look at pretty alarming. Some of the legal advice that he's just freely giving out to the country. I mean, he's basically saying these are losing lawsuits, but we'll see. Well, let's take a look at the next clip.
Where have we come as a country? What's going to happen if we continue to push this narrative to take God out of everything?
Well, I fear for our country if we were to get rid of these things entirely. And when we've got groups like the one you mentioned earlier that are intent on getting rid of any kind of public utterance of religion in public, that's a danger to our society here.
We who must not be named.
This group, he names his group all the time.
Yeah, and directs, I mean, free advertising for First Liberty.
He's well aware of who we are. He has no, he knows our name.
We battle them in court all the time, successfully, as was pointed out. All right, let's take a look at the next one. That's a fun one.
Look, let me give you the clear and very technical legal analysis. If you get a letter from this organization that says you need to get rid of the words God Bless America, or if they try to intimidate you to think that sixth graders' use of the phrase God Bless America over the intercom during the announcement times, right after they said the words under God in the Pledge of Allegiance, and that's somehow unconstitutional, ignore it. It's not worth the paper that is written on.
His clear technical legal advice, ignore it.
I mean, and that's dangerous to be doing. You know, giving out legal advice on television is never really a good idea. Doing it so blatantly when you've admitted less than a minute earlier that that's a losing case is frankly, it's dumb. I mean, there's no other way to put it. You're
advising these cash-strapped school districts to incur legal liability by ignoring a constitutional letter from our organization.
And it's really important, too, because FFRF, we always try to resolve these issues with education first. Like, we don't want to go sue a school district over this issue. We want them to correct their behavior, stop violating the rights of students, and then move on. If we have to sue them, we will. But we'd prefer to resolve it without going to court. And they're escalating situations unnecessarily.
I mean, an important thing, too, to remember is that, you know, we're bringing this on behalf of a parent came to us and wanted this issue to stop. Like this, we're doing it for a person there in the community. Whereas he's coming in, you know, just for his group to tell the school what to do, you know, to advance their agenda of, you know, pushing religion into the schools and trying to get schools to promote religion and endorse religion to kids.
You mean you guys are not roaming the country, sitting in the back of classrooms and waiting for some violation so that you can...
Yes, sadly that talking point is just a talking point.
And another irony is that usually they say, what right does some outside Wisconsin group have to come in here and tell us what to do? But First Liberty is an outside group coming in and telling them what to do as well. So
yeah, but it's something they want to hear.
They want to hear, yeah.
Should we take I think we have one more, Bruce, two more?
Go to firstliberty.org right now. We've got a special gift for you to remind your neighbors and your friends about how important phrases like "In God We Trust" and "God Bless America" are to our country.
There's the special gift right there. It's this tiny, it's so tiny, I don't know if people can see it. In God We Trust in capital letters, and then of course directing people to the First Liberty website.
It's a gift.
Which he's done multiple times on this Fox News appearance. I mean, there's this really incestuous relationship between Fox News and all these right-wing Christian law firms that are out there trying to redefine religious liberty and to advocate for violating the separation of state and church and violating the First Amendment.
Well, then, as you noted before, the relationship ties not between just Fox News and
Yep.
this group now goes all the way into our government.
Into the Texas Attorney General's office, absolutely. And would have been the federal judiciary if we hadn't acted.
Did Fox News ask you for a comment on this show?
No, I guess our invitation got lost, and they were only able to get Jeremy, and they didn't have us come in. And
well, and as you know, this has been happening more and more recently. And I actually date it to Annie Laurie's appearance on Fox when they finally got so tired of us rebutting their nonsense with facts and good argument that they put Annie Laurie against four. I can't remember. It was 4 different guys that they put her up against. And since then, they've kind of stopped inviting us. And now they just go to our opponents and invite them on to repeat those
well,
same
they realized
points.
that they were just having us there so they could all take turns rebutting with a punching bag there. So they thought, well, we don't really need to bring we'll just, we can leave them off and do that.
So is that all the clips from...
Do we have? I think we have one more, right? Okay, that's all. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
So let's go to questions. Thank you for watching the show, and let's see if any of you have, through the magic of wireless here. Okay, Michael Knott has a question. If these commentators consider it acceptable to say God bless America over the Pennsylvania or PA could be PA or Pennsylvania, over the PA system in public schools, would they be similarly accepting of a principal broadcasting the message, Allah bless America?
We already know the answer to that, of course. People would be outraged.
They would be outraged, and rightfully so, because it's a school district promoting one particular religion, and we don't want to see that. Or any religion.
And to tie it back even to the Texas case we talked about, same thing. If it wasn't a Latin cross we were talking about in the county courthouse, the people there would lose their minds and would truly understand the problem of why this is wrong.
So I'm not sure if this is right, but I think there are schools like in Dearborn, Michigan, where a majority or at least a plurality of the students are Muslim, where that could actually kind of play out. I mean,
or they could even broadcast the call to prayer, what the muezzin would say, over the school PA. That's a more likely scenario. That could certainly happen.
Yeah.
And FFRF would stand up against that as well. You know, we often get accused. It's one of the big favorite lines of our opponents is, well, how come you don't ever go after Muslims? And I think we did a whole episode of Ask an Atheist about it. We have an FAQ up about it, explaining that of course we do. It's just that they're rarely in power in government to be able to use the machinery of the state to impose their religion. Correct.
Yeah, in this country. If we were in Baghdad or some other country, it would be totally different.
Of course.
So more questions? Daisy Wright asks, one of their arguments for why this practice of reciting God Bless America should stay is because it's been around for a long time. Is that really a persuasive legal argument? Slavery, segregation, and many other societal ills existed for a long time before they were outlawed.
Man, she did a very nice job of rebutting that on her own, I think. And unfortunately, tradition is one of the most popular arguments that we see in favor of any encroachment of religion into our government. And the alarming thing is that courts and judges have bought it in some cases. In the case of legislative prayer, when you have chaplains give a prayer before an opening session of Congress or of a state legislature, that has been upheld strictly on the basis of history. So this by the Supreme Court in 1983 in a case called Marsh versus Chambers. Unfortunately, it's a terrible, terrible rationale, but it has worked its way into our discourse. And it's one of the reasons that I wrote The Founding Myth, because I'm really trying to push back against a lot of the bad history that we see working its way into the federal legal system.
Okay, but isn't the argument that slavery, for example, was a violent material harm to real human beings? It was horrible. But these religious phrases have been around. They're kind of innocuous. They haven't caused any real harm. No one's really bothered by it. So how can we compare, God Bless America to slavery?
Yeah, I mean, there's that, but that's a different argument than saying that tradition should be upheld for the sake of tradition. Arguing that it doesn't cause any harm is sort of the flip side of that coin. Do you want to?
Well, I was going to say, getting back to this specific issue, there is no tradition of saying "God bless America" following the Pledge of Allegiance. That I think is important to note too.
But on the harm side of things, I mean, let's just step back for a minute and recognize that this is a violation of the Constitution, number one. And if you can violate the Constitution in one respect and it doesn't get corrected, then you can violate it in another, and in another, and in another. And that is something that we see happen. We see these little violations, supposedly harmless, used to justify bigger and more harmful violations. That's a very common thing. I've given talks on this. I think there's one called Sweat the Small Stuff online. But the other thing is that this does harm people. This alienates kids in the classroom who are made to feel like outsiders in their own school, in their own community, because the principal wants to violate the Constitution. And that's not something that the Freedom from Religion Foundation is going to stand by and watch happen. We are going to stand up for those kids and those families every single time.
So in legal terminology, the word injury, in order to get standing, the word injury doesn't have to be just lynchings and physical violence. Injury is a legal concept that you've been exposed to something.
It can be, and I mean, if that's you want to talk about standing to actually sue, that's a different concept entirely, really, and it is. I think it's going to be considerably less important under a conservative Supreme Court.
But still, the parents of one of these kids in the class would have injury.
Of course they would.
It's not like the same kind of harm as slavery, but they're injured in some way.
Of course they would. It is our government exposing their children to religion and to a particular form of religion that they have not signed up for. They have not okayed. It's up to families and parents. This is an issue of parental sovereignty, if you want to get like really technical about it. They get to choose how to educate their children on matters of religion, not the state.
Well, as the woman in that earlier clip showed, she said, "This is what I teach my kid. I have my kid do this." And it's like, right, and the reason why you're able to do that is the school isn't telling your kid something else that you don't believe in.
Yeah.
Okay, so now who's next? Edward McKee. If it is legal for schools to recite "One Nation Under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance, why is it any different to say "God bless America" right after the pledge? I mean, that's what Jeffrey was saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good question. The reason that courts have upheld "One Nation Under God" is because essentially through rote repetition, that phrase has lost all religious significance, according to the courts, meaning that these kids are forced to say it every day. So there really is no longer any religious meaning to the phrase, which is nonsense. We've pointed this out time and time again. One of the most popular things I've ever written was a blog for FFRF called "The Christian Hypocrisy of In God We Trust," where I lay this out and explain it. And courts have absolutely gotten this issue wrong. I think that's the critical thing. And it goes back to what we were just talking about, where little violations are used to justify other violations, and they eventually get bigger. So you have a court making an error in judgment, a wrong decision with "under God," that it could be used to justify "God bless America."
And then again, if "under God" is a non-religious, totally secular phrase, then the religious right shouldn't miss it if it were removed, right? They shouldn't complain about us taking that out, but of course they would miss it dearly.
And that's the hypocrisy. You know, if a court were to declare that praying the rosary or that John 3:16 were no longer religious because it's been repeated so often, the religious right would go nuts, bananas, and rightfully so. I mean, the courts should not be saying that clearly religious statements are not religious. That's not within their purview or their jurisdiction.
Or no one in government should be making that decision.
But you also notice of the people that they interviewed, that they showed in those clips, none of them said, "Oh, I don't understand. God bless America is not religious." They defended it as a religious statement. They said, "No, why are they taking God out of school?" I mean,
It won't be till it gets to court when they'll make that argument.
Right, exactly.
Everybody understands that this is religious. Then when they get to court, they'll say, "Actually, it's not religious. Just kidding."
So is that all the questions, Bruce, Bailey? That's all the questions? Well, I guess that's our show. Did you guys want to say something else, or did you want to plug your book one more time?
No, I think I did a good job.
You did a good job of plugging your book. Well, I'll plug the book one more time. The Founding Myth is just out this week. Why Christian Nationalism is Un-American by Andrew L. Seidel. It has a wonderful preface by a guy named
the preface, people should really read it for the preface.
A two-pager. So thank you for watching. That's our show for today. And we invite you to become a member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which you can help us in our very important work to keep state and church separate and to educate the public about the views of non-theists, atheists, agnostics, secular humanists. You can find us online, ffrf.org, or you can phone us at 1-800-335-4021.
One way you can help FFRF is by contacting government officials who violate the law. So if you want to receive FFRF action alerts right there on your smartphone, text the phrase FFRF to 52886. Again, that's FFRF to 52886.
So, we'll see you again next week for another episode of FFRF's Ask an Atheist.